Welcome to Actual Skill Modelling. This is part 11 of Tamiya's US aircraft carrier Enterprise, CVN65. The scale is 1 to 350. In this part, I'm going to be concentrating on all the aircraft, getting them painted and built. So let's jump into this and see how well I get on. Let's on to the aircraft now, and initially I'm using Mr. Hobby 332 aircraft grey to paint these aircraft. Once it was dried, I felt it was too dark and too beige of a colour, so I'm going to change that colour. The colour looked okay when it was wet, but as it dried, it went a little bit darker, so this is why I changed it. And I've changed it to River Colour 05 white 75% and River Colour 76 light grey 25%. And I think that's a lot better colour than the slightly darker grey that the Mr. Hobby gave me. So I'm on to painting the wheels and struts. And for the struts, I'm using River Colour 90 silver. And these are the tiniest details, you'll barely be able to make them out. And it's the same with the tires, and I'm using for these Tamiya's XF1 flat black. So very small details in there, but I think it's important to paint these in, especially when it all goes together. Even though you'll be barely able to see it, you will see them, and if you don't get it right, it will stand out. So it's time to paint the canopy, and I was humming and hawing about what colour to do this. In the end, I went with the instructions, which is Tamiya's X13 metallic blue. Now, I just wasn't sure whether blue would work as a canopy colour. Generally, you go for a smoky colour or a black, but I thought I'll give it a go. And I asked a couple of people as well, and they said, well, there is a sort of bluish tint to it. So I thought, well, I'll use the metallic blue and see how well it goes. And actually, in the end, I kind of liked the colour. Initially, I was going to do a darker grey colour with then putting on Tamiya's smoke paint over it to give it that glassy look. But as I said, this metallic blue actually does work quite well for the canopy. So all the canopies are going to be the same colour, apart from the Viking, which I'm painting here at the moment. Part of the top part of the canopy is Tamiya's X3 Royal Blue. It comes out as just as a darker blue on one square area of the actual canopy itself. That just helps to highlight the metallic blue, I think. And once I had the main block colours in, I went back to my colour mix of River 05 white 75% and 76 light grey 25%, and that's for the framework of the canopy. Now I'm just doing this freehand. I made a few mistakes as I went along, a hand jerked a little bit and the paintbrush went squiffy. I didn't think about masking them off, but they're so small. It would have taken so much time to mask it. I thought I'll just do it freehand and live with whatever I come up with. It's okay, it's not perfect by any means. There is a couple of mistakes in there, as I said, but I can live with it. The kit comes with 5 different types of aircraft and 8 of each. And we have the F-18A Hornet, the F-14A Tomcat, then we have the Crosshair 2, we have the Viking and the Intruder. So there's quite a nice varied aircraft here. I use Mr. Hobby H311 grey. It's actually a very light grey for the underside of the aircraft, and that was for all the aircraft. The only aircraft that comes in 2 halves is the Crosshair, and assembling this on the sprue, this is just for ease of handling and painting. Also, I'm putting on the landing gear while they're still on the sprue as well, for the same reason, just for ease of handling. These are quite small parts, so I thought it was better while it's in its frame, so there's a lot less movement to assemble these. And each one, there's a little location point on the underside, and they just push in there. It's quite an easy process. You have to be delicate though, because the strut that holds the wheel is quite thin, and that's on all of them, especially on the front wheel as well. The Tomcat is the only one that's got three separate wheels to place on, um, one on each side of the engine, of course. All the rest are molded into one unit. It's now on to the crosshair, and I'm just placing in the main wings. I've already placed in the rear wings. They just slot in. Again, it's self-explanatory. If you do this kit, they just push in. But these aircraft, because I'm displaying them in a static position, I'm folding the wings. So therefore, I have to cut each wing tip. Now, there's very faint marks on each wing for you to do this. Just be aware though, if you are painting them, pre-painting like the way I do, make sure you know where the lines are, because the paint can actually cover up the markings. But once I've cut the wing tips off, then it's just a matter of placing them on the upright position. Look at your contact points on this as well. Make sure that you clean as you go along so that you're going to get a good bond. This is quite important, especially for small areas, because you want the best bond as possible. Don't be fooled thinking, God, it's small, it will adhere easily enough. You do have to treat it just like any other part, and just go slowly and carefully, because they're small. They will tend to break if you handle them too much and too harshly. I found as well placing a little pot paint next to the upright tip just helps stabilise it until the cement is set enough for it to go freestanding. And this will be the same process for all the crosshairs, and indeed the other planes that are having the wings folded. So it's onto the Hornet, and it's that same process as I said. I've cut off the wing tips, and I'm just placing these on now. You need a steady hand for this as well. Just be careful where you're putting your cement. Again, if you've pre-painted like I do, I'm used to it, but some people don't do it this way. So there's a chance that you can muck up your paintwork. You just have to be careful. And once I've got the wings reattached, it's putting in the rudders or the tail fins. There's two of these obviously on the Hornet. There is a little location points for you to follow if you're not sure of the positioning. For a small aircraft, for the shape, they're quite detailed. Next is the Viking. Now the two engines you do have to place on yourself. I done them while they were on the sprue, and they have two little location points for them to fit into. So as you can see there, I'm cutting off the wing tips. Now these ones are cut off at a slight angle, but again, there's a small line for you to follow as a guide to cut these off. And once they're off, they're assembled in the same way. This time I'm putting on the tail fin first before I lay on the wings. The wings are folded up in a certain way here, and that's why the cut is off straight as such. As you can see there, it goes at a slight angle, one pointing towards the canopy, and the second one will rest behind it. These were a little bit more difficult to fit. You would think because they're lying down on the fuselage, they would be easy enough to just place on, but getting the positioning can be a little bit tricky. Next we have the intruder. So as same as before, it's a lot of repetitive work. I think they designed this kit so everyone's not too dissimilar when you're assembling it. Anyway, it's quite good because you know exactly what you're doing by the time you've done a couple of sets. The position of the folded wings here were a lot easier. The tips sort of lay onto each other on top of the fuselage, so there's no weird angle to worry about. And lastly, we have the F-14 Tomcat. Now this assembly was quite easy. It was just the tail fins I was placing on. If you're having this plane in flight mode, if you're having it taken off from the ship, you would have to remove the wings, but it gives you a set of wings for them to be in the flight mode configuration. That cut would be quite tricky on this mold, so you want to bear that in mind if you decide to do them like that. And now they're assembled, I'm just going around touching up any paint that's been damaged with the cement. And now going into a little bit more detail with the painting. So I'm using Tamiya's XS56 metallic grey to paint the engine cowls or the exhausts. They are very small areas to paint, but it is worth putting in those tiny bits of detail because they do stand out. On the Viking, I didn't like the solid plastic for the engines. I should have drilled them out, really, but I didn't think about it at the time. So I thought, how am I going to get around with this? Because it just looked too bulky and wrong. After looking at some photos, I decided to paint in the protectors on the engine. So for that, I'm using 167 RAF Barley Grey. It's just a darker grey than the actual aircraft itself, and I thought they may have been red, tell you the truth, but most of the photos I looked at, they were all sort of grey, these covers. So now it's on to the decals. And as you can imagine, these decals are tiny. They are doable to put on, but just beware, they are difficult because they are so small to put on. I only placed on the decals that were going to be visible. I didn't bother with the ones on the underside for the wings that you wouldn't see once the aircraft are in position. Otherwise, it would have just took me forever to get these on. The decals were done in the course of a couple of days. The actual assembly, again, of course, in a couple of days with the painting. So it takes a lot of work to get these little aircraft done. And this is where I'll end part 11. If you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the channel for my other builds? If you subscribe to the channel, and please do so, hit the notification bell, that way you'll be kept up to date not only with this build, but all my future builds as well, of course. Hit the like button, don't be afraid to leave a comment, and of course you can share the video. But for now, thank you all very much for watching, bye bye.